After the bread has fermented overnight, the next morning I give it a stir. And then the most important thing to remember is to remove some starter for the next batch, about as much as we put into the bread to start this batch. A few times I've accidentally baked my starter, which means I had to start this whole process from scratch. Then I add 12 grams of salt. This is 2% of the flour. Then I add another 300 grams of flour, totaling all of my flour to 600 grams in the bread. Then it's important to stir it really well. This is a no-knead bread, and so it's going to be too sticky to knead. You just stir it really well and then let it sit and let the gluten build on its own. After 6 hours or so, I use a spatula because it's so sticky I can't work it with my hand, and carefully form it into a loaf or a ball. Once it's all shaped, I turn it into a cloth-lined basket. This one's specifically for baking bread, but you could also take a colander and line it with a dish towel or something like that. And this is where it will then prove for about an hour as the oven is preheating. Once I get it in the basket, I try to turn it so it's evenly coated with flour. I preheat the oven with the Dutch oven in it to 500 degrees. If you use a Le Creuset, it's important to not use the plastic tab on the lid. That's only rated to about 375 degrees. I have a brass top to my lid, allowing me to heat it to 500 degrees. After the oven and the Dutch oven are preheated, then I turn the bread out of the basket into the Dutch oven. The Dutch oven works as sort of an oven within the oven, helping to capture steam, which gives the bread such a lovely crust and a nice chewy crumb. Then I bake the bread for 20 minutes at 500 degrees, and then lower the temperature to 450 degrees for 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes, I remove the lid and then bake it for an additional 20 minutes to get it nice and dark. I pull the bread out of the oven and put it on a cooling rack. And then it's very important to let the bread cool until it stops singing. It makes a little crackling sound. If you cut it too soon, it actually hasn't finished cooking yet. So it's important to let it rest at least an hour before you enjoy your delicious loaf of sourdough bread.